Thank you, Pastor. It's an honor to be here. I just want to, before we get started, as a people, as a family, can we just give a round of applause to Pastor Torres and Pastora, Pastor in the back. We just love you guys so much. Thank you for the opportunity, the chance, the blessing that it is to be here this morning. Before I get too carried away and speak for 2 hours, I'm going to hand it over to my wife, but we just want to first present our new little guy, our new member of the family. This is Ezra Gray Curle. And he is our newest little 5 months old. He is just the crown jewel of our life right now. We're just enjoying every moment with him. And it just has been so much fun raising him and just being on this journey. And so I'm going to hand the microphone over to my wife, Mariah, so that she can share a little bit about that and about our summer. And then we'll go from there. Amen?
Well, it was a crazy, amazing, powerful, crazy summer. We not only had a baby, the best baby in the world, huh? You want to say hi? You want to eat it, I know. But we hosted 5 interns this year. One of those being Darrin's brother, who helped us lead those, of young people that just joined us on the field out of their own heart, their own desire, wanted to be poured into and learn to be a part of what God is doing on the ground in Guatemala. They actually joined us in Costa Rica as well, and God used them powerfully. We know that that was not only a seed sown for that moment, but for the future and what God has in them for the future. And we know it's powerful. We were very excited and very honored to be a part of that growth in them, and know that that's something that God has called us to in the future is discipleship. That's what He's called us all to, right? Is that the way we build the kingdom is by building disciples who make other disciples. And so there are 1,000 different testimonies and stories I could tell you. We could be here all day if you wanted. But my personal favorite from this summer actually happened in Costa Rica. And I'm a little bit biased because he's my son, but it included him. So we traveled to Costa Rica, and we met with a pastor, Pastor David, and he is a pastor of connections, has an incredible gift of connections. Well, he held a revival service in an indigenous village in Costa Rica called Talamanca. And in that service, in walks the queen of that indigenous village. And she got saved at the end of that, which was phenomenal because this group of people, this woman was raised under witchcraft with witch doctors and shamans and all sorts of powerful demonic worship. And so this salvation was nothing short of a miracle. Not only did she get saved, but God has put in her a fire, a huge passion to see her people, her entire village saved. This indigenous village consists of the large majority of Costa Rica, the population of Costa Rica. They inhabit an incredible span of land and territory there. And so we're believing that God will do His work in those people. Well, we had the opportunity to go and meet her. We were invited to go and stay in her home. Well, the church that we were visiting, Pastor David's church, he announced that to his church. And at the end of it, I had about 12 people, separate people, come up to me and ask me, "Are you really bringing your baby? Are you really doing that? Do you really think that's safe?" And this fear inside of me just started to rise up that was never there before because I had my baby in Guatemala. He's a missionary baby. And never had I felt that fear before until that moment when the enemy had just planted those seeds. And I began to think, well, maybe I shouldn't go. Maybe I'm not a good mom. Maybe we should stay. Maybe we should go back to Guatemala. Maybe we should. And Darrin looked at me and he said, "No, we're going. And we're taking Ezra because you carry the grace of God for this calling. He's called you to this." And Ezra was born into that, which means he carries the same grace, the same covering that we carry. So I said, okay. I was still so fearful. And so we arrived in this village. It was a long 6-hour journey in a car. And he did amazing, which was the first God-given blessing. We arrived and we stayed in this queen's home. She let us sleep in her bed. She was so gracious, so kind. Yeah, you loved her, huh? Yeah. And the next day we woke up and her daughter was there, and she had brought her son. Now he was a little bit of a chunky baby. He was a little bit bigger than him, and so I had thought that he was about 6 months, maybe 7 months old, and so I asked her how old her baby was. Yeah, and she said he's 2 months old. Well, that's how old Ezra was, and I said, when was he born? And she said, April 30th. And I said, no way. What time was he born? They were born on the same day, only 2 hours apart. Pastor David looked at us and said, this is no coincidence that they're meeting today. This was God predestined. God intended for this to happen, for them to meet, and this is not the last time that they will meet each other. He will return to Costa Rica one day, and they'll meet each other again. And I was just blown away. In that moment, my fear and all my worries and everything just melted. It was like God had got down on my level, like you do with a toddler, and said, it's okay, I'm right here. And God moved powerfully through the rest of that week, through our team, through us, even through Ezra. And we know that was just the tip of the iceberg, just the beginning. God did incredible miracles, touched so many lives. We saw so many saved, and we're believing for even more in the next year. If everything is set, we should have a video for you. If not, then we got a good word. So enjoy this.
No worries, not a problem. We, like Mariah said, had an incredible summer. It was really the busiest, insane, just incredible summer. 3 months, 4 months of our entire lives. We had Ezra, but I want to back it up a little bit and just share a little bit of the journey that it took to get to the place that we are now. We were last year, as we finished our summer, we were just finishing in like August, and we were at that point in lives, we were in Guatemala as full-time missionaries for about 6 months. We were only there for about 6 months, and then we found out that my wife was pregnant, and so we were just blown away by that, and just very intimidated because during that time, we had only been making $100 a month to live off of. So we found out that we were pregnant, and we were only making that much money a month to eat and to supply everything that we needed. And so when we found out we were pregnant, we were just like, oh my goodness, what should we do now? There is no way that we can have this baby. We were living in somebody's just like shack for the most part, just a block wall, cement floor, just moss and mold growing everywhere. No condition to have a baby. We didn't own anything. We didn't own a vehicle. We didn't own a fridge, stove, nothing. We didn't have anything. But we found out we were pregnant, and we were like, oh my goodness, maybe we should go back home. Maybe we should come back to the U.S., live with family, and find some help. We prayed about it, and then not too long after that, God spoke to us, and he said, no, this baby does not change the calling that you have. Stay here and keep doing what I've called you to do. So we decided, all right, we're going to stay. And as soon as we decided we're going to stay, things just started to work. God started to provide. We just started to see movement in our life. We just saw people come alongside us, support us financially. And I just want to say from then until now, God has fulfilled and supplied every need that we have had in this journey. We have bought a car. We have bought a stove. We have bought a fridge. We were able to get things for Ezra. It's been an incredible journey to get to where we are now. And I want to thank you guys because the last time we were here, y'all were a crucial part in that. You guys were a part of that blessing that where we are now, we couldn't have been here without that. See, God is our foundation. That's where we build our lives. But there's pillars. There's pillars in our lives that help us stand up sometimes. And I want to thank you guys for being one of those pillars in our lives to which without that, we would not have been able to stand. And so I just want to thank you before we get started for blessing us financially and through your prayers and just thinking about us. And I'm sure my grandma tells you all about us all the time. But just want to thank you all for standing alongside us in those ways because it really makes the world of a difference and has helped us get to this point to where not only have we had a baby, but we've been able to keep him alive and we've been able to do such amazing things. And it really is more than I can express to you guys. Thank you all so much. This summer was incredible. We had Ezra, but we also had 5 young people, like Mariah was saying, one of whom was my brother. And we just had an incredible summer, just seeing God move, just seeing God work, just growing step by step, day by day, making it happen, just trying to do what God has called us to do, fulfill the purpose and the plan that he has for us. And now that we're at the end of it, we're looking back and we're just like, man, how did we do that? And it is only by the grace of God in which we were able to accomplish everything that we did. It really was such an amazing time meeting the Queen and her daughter and just the journey that we've been on. It's been incredibly fun. And so I just want to pray and then we'll jump into the word. Does that sound all right? Amen. God, thank you for this beautiful morning. Thank you for this opportunity, this chance, this moment with you, God, where hopefully you can open up our eyes, our hearts, our ears to understand and see a new part of you today, God, that we would learn, that we would grow, that you would take us from greater to greater, that we would not be stale, that we would not be stuck in one place, but we would be able to take steps with you, Father, in the direction in which you have called us to go. Just bless this time, this communion that we have together, and in your name as a family, we all said, Amen. Amen. I was preparing for this and going back and forth and just seeking God's heart. And I came upon something that I would love to share with you guys today. And it's 3 different passages of Scripture. And hopefully we can go through those 3 and then tie them all together. And so if you have your Bibles and you like to pull those out, feel free to turn to Luke chapter 10. We will be in Luke chapter 10, verse 38 to 42. As you turn there, just keep that finger marked, and then we'll go through 2 other passages of Scripture. But we're starting in verse 10, Luke 10, reading in 38. This is the story of Mary and Martha, the worship and serve. Now it happened as they went that he entered a certain village, and a certain woman named Martha welcomed him into her house. And she had a sister called Mary, who also sat at the feet of Jesus and heard his word. But Martha was distracted with much serving, and she approached him and said, Lord, do you not care that my sister has left me to serve alone? Therefore tell her to help me. And he said to her, Martha, Martha, you are worried and troubled about many things, but one thing is needed. And Mary has chosen that good part, which will not be taken away from her. And so here in Luke 10, we see this moment, this story between Mary and Martha and Jesus. And so just imagine opening up your front door, just opening it up, and who's in front of you but Jesus himself? Just what do you do in that moment other than faint and fall over backwards? What do you do when you open up the door and Jesus himself is there? I, for one, growing up with my mother, Curle, if any of you have met her, you will know this to be true. Whenever we had guests over, what would she say to us? Go and clean. Every time we had guests coming over, go clean your room, go do the dishes, go vacuum, go and prepare, go and clean the house so that we can host our guests in the best way possible. And so between my brother, my sister, and myself, and if you do know my family, you'll say amen, I ended up doing most of the cleaning. Because my brother and my sister were a little bit on the, the other side of things. And so I had to do most of the cleaning. So I spent my whole childhood cleaning because we often always had guests over. And so here in this story, we see this moment take place where she opens the door and Jesus is there in form. And they come into her house, him and I imagine a couple other people, the disciples, and they sit down and Mary is sitting there at his feet listening to what he's saying. That's what Mary's doing. She's sitting there listening to what he is saying. And then on the other hand, we see Martha. Martha was doing what I was doing, cleaning. She kind of got distracted. She looked around and she said, oh, these things aren't done. My dishes aren't done. I need to go vacuum. I need to even prepare food for him. And she was over here doing all of this stuff. And then discontent grew in her heart. And she was like, do you not see that I'm working so hard? Tell Mary to come and help me. And then what does he say? He says, no, no, no. He says, she's found what it is good, and it will not be taken away from her. And so in this moment, we see these two sides of things. We see Mary and Martha. We see one side that got it and one side that missed it. And what I find is interesting, and I'll just give a little insert here for those that even serve the church. Sometimes, as you see Martha, you could be serving Jesus, but still miss the heart of the moment. You could still be serving because she was serving, she was preparing, she was doing these things for him, but somehow still missed it. And so I've been there many times growing up in the household that I have. As a pastor's kid, as a church member my whole life, there's moments where I would be serving but still missing the real connection and the point of the moment. And so that's one story that we see. If you want to go a few pages back, we'll go back to Mark 14. In Mark 14, we'll start in verse 3. Verse 3, Mark 14, it says, the anointing of Bethany. And being in Bethany at the house of Simon the leper, he sat at the table. A woman came, having an alabaster flask of very costly oil of spikenard. Then she broke the flask and poured it on his head. But there were some who were indignant among themselves and said, why was this fragrant oil wasted? For it might have been sold for more than 300 denarii and given to the poor. And they criticized her sharply, but Jesus said, let her alone. Why do you trouble her? She has done a good work for me. For you have the poor with you always, and whenever you wish, you may do good to them, but me you do not always have. So she has done what she could. She has come beforehand to anoint my body for burial. Assuredly, I say to you, wherever the gospel is preached in the whole world, what this woman has done will also be told as a memorial to her. And this is the second moment, the second encounter that we see. We have this moment where this woman has saved up an entire year's worth of finances. She has gathered a whole year's worth of finances, and she goes out and she buys this jar of oil, very expensive jar of oil. And then she comes to Jesus and she takes it and she kind of breaks it over his head and covers him, anoints him in oil, if you will, and just does that moment, that connection. She just has this moment with him. And so she does that act of surrender and sacrifice, and she breaks this oil over him. And then we have the disciples, the people who walked and listened and talked and lived with Jesus on the other hand. We have the disciples who in the moment missed the heart as well, because as she did this, they were like, oh my goodness, what are you doing? Do you know how valuable that oil is? We could sell that and get a large amount of money, and just imagine what we could do with all that money. And I maybe take that side of things because in our life, finances are challenging. And so sometimes imagine if we only had this much money. Imagine what we could do. And so I'm sure I would have maybe fallen into this category too. But they say we could sell that and we could do so much good for the poor. And he comes back and he says, no, what she has done is valuable. What she has done is important. And throughout the years and as the gospel gets told, it'll be served as a memorial to her. That one moment. And so here as well, we have this situation where we have this young lady who got it. We have this young lady who, yes, experienced the moment. And then we have the disciples, on the other hand, who didn't. We have the disciples who missed the heart of the moment. And so that being the second one, we can see here the difference and the decisions and how the same moment turned out two different things, two different examples and consequences. So if we go back even a few more pages, and we'll be here a little longer, this will be a little longer of a passage, but we'll go back to Mark 5. Go back, about 9, not too good at math. Go back a couple books. Mark 5. And I'm going to start in verse 25 and read through 34. And Feel free to follow along with me. Mark 5, verse 25. Now a certain woman had a flow of blood for 12 years and had suffered many things from many physicians. She had spent all that she had and was no better, but rather grew worse. When she heard about Jesus, she came behind him in the crowd and touched his garment, for she said, "If only I may touch his clothes, I shall be made well." Immediately the fountain of her blood was dried up, and she felt in her body she was healed of the affliction. And Jesus, immediately knowing in himself power had gone out of him, turned around in the crowd and said, "Who touched my clothes?" And the disciples said to him, "You see the multitude thronging you, and you say, 'Who touched me?'" And he looked around to see her who had done this thing. But the woman, fearing and trembling, knowing what had happened to her, came and fell down before him and told him the whole truth. And he said to her, "Daughter, your faith has made you well. Go in peace and be healed of your affliction." And so here we have the third story, and I will tell you all together. We have this third story, this moment where there's this street, and Jesus is walking down, actually on his way to perform a miracle, but he's walking, and as he's walking, the people are, that's Jesus over there. That's got to be him. Let's go see. Let's go check it out. And so we have people that start gathering around him as he walks, and I imagine the disciples almost as bodyguards, just trying to protect him, but they're getting so close that they're rubbing shoulders, that they're all walking together, and then off to the side we have this lady who's been sick for years and years and has spent everything that she had on the doctors, on the visits, everything that she had spent and didn't get better, but if not, grew worse. And so she's in this place of just being outcast from everybody, just being off to the side, ignored, just, I don't want anything to do with her, and she's got these issues, and she's unclean, and all of these things. And then over there on the side, as she sees the crowds and as she hears the name Jesus, she has this moment where she thinks, if only I could touch him, I shall be made well. If only I can touch him, then I'll be healed. And so I imagine her fighting her way through the crowds and just sneaking up behind him. And then she reaches out her hand and just touches his clothes as he walks by. And as she touches him, the power of God is released through him. His power is released, flows into her and heals her in a moment. And she feels it. She knows. She just has this moment. She feels that I have been healed. And Jesus walking, as he gets touched, probably didn't feel the touch itself, but he felt the release of the power in him. He felt that moment, that release, and he stops and he says, "Who has touched me?" And the disciples are like, "What are you talking about? Everybody's been touching you. You've been rubbing shoulders with everybody. There's so many people around you that it's impossible to know who touched you. What do you mean?" And he says, "No, there is somebody who touched me. There is somebody that had a special moment with me. There is somebody among this crowd that has felt and connected to the power within me." And then she is the one, because she had felt it. She had felt the healing in her body. She says, fearing and trembling, she comes up and she says, "It was me who touched you. It was me who touched you." And then he says, "No, your faith has healed you. Go and be well." And she's healed. And in this story, we also have the two examples. We have this lady who had been sick for so many years and was healed, and then we have the crowd around him. We have the crowd of people that were gathering around him for maybe selfish reasons or to go and check it out or for other reasons. And we have this crowd of people that might have, yes, been rubbing shoulders, yes, had touched him, yes, had been in his presence, but yet missed out on the power that was within him. And all of these stories, what do they have in common? They have that one phrase: you can be in his presence, but still miss out on his power. In each of these stories, we have those two examples. We have Mary and Martha. Martha, in his presence, missed out on the moment, missed out on the power. Mary, who was seated, she was seated at his feet, focused in on him. And she was the one that connected. She was the one that had that experience. And then we have the oil and the disciples. Like I said, she got it. She surrendered. She sacrificed. She broke that oil over him. She had a special connection with him. And then we have the disciples who missed out on the power, on the value of that moment. And then like we just read, the lady and the crowd that were touching Jesus all along, missed it. And then just one lady who just reached out and just barely touched him, received it. And so you can be in his presence and miss out on his power. This is something that I think every missionary kid, every pastor kid, every person that grows up in the church experiences. I've experienced it my whole life. It is true. Growing up in church, being here, even this morning maybe, or whenever it is, right now even, you can get stuck in this place where you are in this routine. It just becomes normal. You're in his presence, and then there's people around you experiencing it, and somehow you're missing it, and it's just confusing, and sometimes it just, you don't even notice it, and you're just living life day to day, serving, cleaning, sweeping, but still missing out on the power of the moment. There's a value around us every second of every day. There's a value of things that are happening around us, and it's our job to recognize the value of those moments. And if we don't, we'll miss them. And so if I were to title this message and just put something to it, it would be miss it by an inch, miss it by a mile, because we could miss out on his power by an inch by not being in the right position and miss out on what he has for us. We could miss out on it. All of those people around him kind of missed out on the miracle because they weren't positioned in the right place. And the young lady who did receive it, she was in the right place, and she experienced the miracle. And so I'm not talking about a physical presence, not where I am physically, because as we've learned, obviously the physical presence alone doesn't mean that you'll be able to connect to the power, because they were all in his presence, but missed out on the miracle. And so I want to pull one thing out of each of these scriptures, each of these passages, that will help us get our heart and who we are, our soul, we get us, not physically, but spiritually in a right place so that we can experience the power of what's around us. I want to focus in on three things, and you know, this is something that, and so you don't have to turn back. I'll just go there myself, but this is something that I have dealt with my whole life, to be honest. Things to me, in a moment of transparency, things to me get normal really quickly. They get normal really quickly. If I'm around something long enough, it gets normal. It just becomes what it just is around me, and it happens quickly. And so that's something that I deal with, seeing the value of what's around me. And so as I've grown up in church and been around it my whole life, and missions my whole life, it has become normal to me. It was normal. And even in marriage, I've seen moments where we've only been married 3 years, and you think we would still be in that like blissful, my bride, but I deal with that. It just becomes normal, and I miss out on the moments around me. And so, to be honest, in missions even, I've seen this happen in my life in missions. I had grown up doing it, grown up around an extreme level of poverty. I had grown up experiencing that, and so as I went out with Huv and Ed and started leading trips, the poverty around me became normal, to where I would see something and it wouldn't affect me the way it would somebody who saw it for the first time. My wife has been the greatest ministry to me in the missions that we've done, because I had done it for so long that I would go week in and week out. I would host teams, and God would move, and we'd have incredible moments filled with his power. And for me, it was just normal week after week routine. It's like a job, right? And it wasn't until my wife came down with a fresh perspective and a fresh heart. She came down and she saw that 5-6-year-old kid working all day to support their family. She saw that and said, that's not right. Sorry, I hit the bottom there. She saw the people making $10 a month to live off of, and she said, that's not right. She saw the people without clothing on, just dirty as can be, living in the street, and she said, that's not right. And it wasn't until I saw her heart break in those moments that it refreshed in me that perspective of, yes, you are right. That's not right. This little boy that's been working since he could walk and talk, that's been working just to provide food for his family, he shouldn't have to do that. To give you an example, last year we were walking down the street, and Mariah and I were on this side, and then on this side, it was a very touristy area, so there's a lot of souvenirs. And on this side, there was a family. There was a father, a mother, and a little boy, no taller than this, but yet pretty older in age, but short. And he hadn't met his daily quota. Their parents say to them, you need to go out and you need to sell this amount of money a day. You need to make this much a day. You need to sell these things, so go out and work for it. And he hadn't reached what his parents had told him to reach, and so his father just lifts up his hand and boom, strikes him on the head. Just boom. And to be honest, I wasn't affected that much. I had seen it happen, but I was just, well, it is what it is. And then I look over at my wife, who just immediately was bawling her eyes out. She was just crying her eyes out. And so the mom and dad leave. They walk off angry. And the little boy, who's holding his basket of souvenirs, sits down on the curb, sits down on the street, and is just crying his eyes out. And my wife, in the amazing woman that she is, she gets up from our side. She walks over, sits down next to him, puts her arm around him, pulls him in close, and they cried together for a couple minutes. She prayed over him. She just held him. She was with him. And for me, it was that same thing, that take me back a few notches, that reset, that new perspective, that, wow, I missed it. I missed it somehow, and my wife got it. I missed it. The power of the moment that was around me, I missed it. And I needed her. God knew that I needed her in my ministry, because it really refreshed and reset me with a new passion, a new love, a new, that's not right. We need to do something about that. We cannot be okay with it. We cannot be okay with these kids working their whole lives. We cannot be okay with them not knowing how to write their own name because they've never had a chance to be educated. Those things are not okay, and we need to do something about it. And I needed her in my life to hit that refresh button. And so Mariah was, for me, that moment. But I want to talk about a few things that could help any of us establish that heart positioning that will allow us to see the value of the moments that happen around us. In the first story of Mary and Martha, I believe that we need to have a focused heart. In this story, we get two clear perspectives. Martha, who was distracted. Martha, who was she was doing the things that needed to be done around her, but she was not focused on the most important thing in the room, which was Jesus. Then we have Mary, who was sitting beneath him, focused 100%, everything that she was. She was focused in on every word that came out of his mouth. And so I believe that we need to have a focused heart, that every day when we wake up, we are taking our eyes and we are moving them off of the things that are distracting us, and we are focusing in on the most important thing in the room. We're moving our eyes off of our problems and our issues, and we're turning to the solution. We're shifting that perspective every morning, where the challenges, the things that we face, the illnesses, the job changes, getting fired, having to redo life, we kind of shift our focus away from those things, and we focus in on the most important thing in the room. Amen? In the second story with the perfume and the disciples, I think we get a clear picture here that we need to have a heart of surrender. A heart of surrender. In this moment, we have monetary value, the oil, and she took that, a whole year's worth, a whole year's wage, and she was willing to surrender that to Jesus. She surrendered it. She sacrificed it. She broke it over him, and she had this special connection. And the disciples who were saying, no, we could sell that and look what we could do with it. And they weren't willing to surrender the value of that item. And so for us, I believe that as well as focusing in, we need to have a heart of surrender, that every day we wake up and we say, Lord, let your will be done and not my will. Amen. It's easy as men to be a little prideful as well. And so, we make decisions based off of even common sense. We can make decisions in our life that that's obviously the best decision. That makes the most sense. But did we take that decision and surrender it to the Lord before we made the decision? Sometimes it's easy to take that decision and just keep it to ourselves and say, that makes the most sense, so I'm going to go ahead and do that. But we never really surrendered it to get God's perspective on it. And so I believe that we need to have a surrendered heart, that we say, let your will be done and not my will. Let your will be done and not my will, so that we can step into that place of living a life of surrender in the same way that this young lady did, that we would not only surrender the bad things. Sometimes it's just surrender, my sickness. I'm going to surrender my sins. Yes, that's all good. But sometimes we also need to surrender our dreams and our goals. We need to surrender what's coming. We need to surrender every part of who we are to say, Lord, remove my perspective, remove what I want from my life, and replace it with what you have. That I would set down at your feet my stuff, and I would pick up the things that you have for me. So we need to live a surrendered life, have that heart of surrender. And then in the last story, with this lady in the crowd, the woman who was healed and the people that missed it, I believe that we need to have an expectant heart. An expectant heart. Here, when we see her say, if only I can touch him, that's not a statement of maybe he'll heal me. That's not just a weak, that's not just a feeble statement. That is a strong statement. She says, if only I can touch him, I will be healed. If only I can touch him, I will be healed. And so it's clear that she is expecting a miracle in her life. She's expecting a move of God to happen and take place within her. And so when she goes and touches him, it's not just maybe, it's a yes, it will happen. I will be healed. I'm going to expect him to move. And so we need to have an expecting heart. We need to have an expecting heart. Some days we wake up and we have an amazing things planned. We're going to go build a house for a widow. We're going to go give out food. And that's what's on the docket. And so we just fall in line with, okay, that's what we're going to go and do. And so we go and build a house, and we have an amazing day. And God willing, that widow or that family would give their lives to the Lord, and that's all cool. But if you go back to the beginning, did we expect his greatness in that day? Sometimes we don't, because we're focused on what we have to do. We're like, the house will be amazing. This will be, but were we expecting more? Were we expecting a move of God to happen in our lives? And sometimes we don't. And so I believe that every day we need to wake up and we need to say, Lord, I'm expecting you to move today. I'm expecting you to move today. Because if she didn't expect the miracle, God would have passed her by and she would have missed out on his power. And so we need to be focused in. We need to be surrendered. We need to be expecting. We need to be expectant so that when we wake up, our day is filled with purpose. When we wake up, our day is filled with purpose, joy, a passion to go out and meet the world around us. Sometimes we don't even want to leave the house because we don't want to see people. And that's we've all been there. I just want to stay home today so I don't have to talk to anybody. But when we do, we need to be expectant. We need to say, Lord, you have called me to something great, and I expect that today I will step into that. I expect that today I will see you move. I expect to hear from you. I expect to see things in my life that will be evidence of my walk with you. And so we take these three things and we put them all together, and I believe that we can position our hearts into a place where we will truly be walking every day, every moment, every step with that perspective, that we would see the value of what's going on around us. And I say all this because my heart for you is that you would not miss a single thing that God has for you. And that's what we're all called to do. We're called to take what God has given us. We're called to have that perspective. We're called to live this life, not only for ourselves, but our life is to glorify God. But as well as that, we are supposed to take those things and disciple people around us. Why? So that they can experience the best that God has for them. We're supposed to take people in. I don't know who I would be today if it wasn't for Caleb and Alyssa Mooney, who took me in when I was young and didn't know much, and they discipled me, they walked with me, they led me. I probably wouldn't be married to Mariah without them because they trained us up in marriage. Without them, I don't know where I would be, and you have the potential to be that for anybody. You have that potential in you to be that person for somebody. To where we are walking as a family. We're walking arm in arm. We're walking together. We're not just living for ourselves, but we're focused in on the people around us. And so when we get our foundation right, when we get those things in place to where we are living in that place, what happens is God will take that and yes, he will do things in you. But because you are living in a place of surrender and you are living in a place of serving him, he will take you and he will use you greatly to impact the world around you. We see it time and time again in our mission trip because people will come down with the heart of service. They will come down and they are expecting to see some things happen. They're expecting to serve Guatemala. And what happens in that place is, yes, they do, but the miracle is what God does in them. The miracle, and it's arguably the best part of our mission trips, is what God does in them, because when they're in the right place, it opens up doors for God to work in their lives that were closed before. So that they can step into a newness, so that they can step into a fresh place of passion and love and joy. And then what happens when they go home is that God uses what he's done in them to impact people around them. And so my desire, my heart for every person here is that we would step into that place of surrender, sacrifice, focus, expectant heart. We would step into that place. So yes, God can work in our lives. And yes, we can be healed. And yes, we can experience his power. But also so that God can use us to go home and impact the people around us in the same way that he does on our trips. And so that's my heart for you, so that every day we wake up filled with passion and love and purpose. That God would speak to us clearly, that we would not be lost, that we wouldn't be full of doubt and fear, but we would be able to remove those things from life, that we would be able to remove those so that we can live and step into the people, the person, the woman, the man of God that he has called you to be, that he has created for you to be. Because the reality is that God has planned so much more than you can imagine. God has planned so much for you guys, and I don't want you to miss it by an inch. I don't want anybody to miss it by an inch. God has called Mariah and I to really focus in on young people. This year we had 5 young people with us for 2 months in Guatemala, Costa Rica, El Salvador. We were able to disciple the younger generations, and I believe he's called us to continue doing that. Next year we have over 12 young people interested in interning with us. We have 12 young people interested in serving alongside of us. And so it's just clear that God is bringing those kids around us so that we can lift them up, so that we can take them from where they're at and set them in a place that is better, that we can provide wisdom, that we can help them along this path, along this life, along this journey, that we can get their perspectives in a different place so that they can serve people around them, so that they can step into the young people that God has created them to be. And it doesn't stop with young people. It's an entire life journey. Because God will always take you from greater to greater. You don't ever get there. Doesn't matter how old you are, how much you've been doing this. You don't ever get to the end until we do get to the end later, right? But while we're here, while we're living, we don't get to the end because God didn't say, I'm going to take you from greater to greater to greater, and then you'll be there. He said, I'm going to take you from greatness to greatness, that his mercies are new every day, that he will supply, he will renew, he will give you new things every day if we're focused in, so that we can continue to grow. We can continue to become children of him that he's proud of. That's one of my biggest desires in life, that when I pass away one day, he will say, my son, I am proud of you. My daughter, I am proud of you. You did well, my good and faithful servant. I am proud of the things that you have done, that you were able to live a life of surrender, of sacrifice, that you're able to shift perspective and focus on serving and loving people around you, that my will was accomplished and you were a part of that. At the end of our day, every day Mariah and I get home, one of our habits at the end of our weeks is to say, we take everything that God did, amazing things, miracles, things that we could never have expected. We take those things and we lift them up and we say, God, look at what you did. Thank you for letting us be a part of it. Thank you for letting us be a part of it. And that's the state that we all need to be in every day. God, look at what you did, and thank you for letting us be a part of it, because God is working around us always. God is always working. That's the truth, that God is always working and speaking and growing and doing things around us. And it's up to us to position ourselves in that place or to be in another place to where we miss it. God is always working. And so our lives are designed to bring glory and honor to him. And so as we step in a little bit more and a little bit more to what he has for us and we continue to grow, our job at the end of the day is to say, Lord, look at what you did. And just, I'm blessed. Thank you for letting me be a part of it. It's not anything that I was able to do, but just thank you for letting me be a part of that. God has called. He has challenged. He wants to grow. He wants to walk with you. And I believe that we will see those things happen in our lives. I believe that as we expect greatness, we will see it happen in our lives. That we will see those miracles take place. That they wouldn't only be stories. That these things wouldn't only be stories, but they would be real life to us. That we, especially in my generation, these things have become stories. They have lost the this actually happened attitude. I see younger people reading or not even knowing the Bible, but whenever they do, it's just kind of like this like a fiction. It just, somebody wrote it somewhere, but they don't grasp the reality of this happened. This happened to normal people. This happened to regular people. This happened. And there's no reason why it can't happen in my life. There's no reason why I can't see these types of things happen in my life. There's no reason. And it's up to me to decide, am I going to miss it or am I going to do my very best to receive everything that is around me and what God has for me? That we would be focused, that we would be surrendered, and that we would expect great things to happen. I want to pray with y'all because I believe that this is something that requires response, that this is a moment where we need to respond, where we look and we search our lives and we say, where am I maybe missing out on this? Where am I not focused enough? Am I not surrendering every part of who I am? Am I not even expecting? Am I just waking up and going through my days just waiting for something or, just waiting for nothing? Or am I expecting great things? And so I would like to pray. I don't know if there's a guitar or piano that could maybe play along with us, but I just want to take a moment to search ourselves, to focus in on our hearts and to say, God, help me be in a position to where I can experience everything that you have for me, because that's the best life that I can live. That's the best life that I can live. My grandparents, on both sides actually, are always afraid of us being in Guatemala. They're always, you're not safe enough for all of these things. And Mariah has a great response. She says, the safest place, the best place that I can be is in the will of God for my life. That's the best place that I can be. And it's more dangerous when I'm not living in the will and the plan that he has for me. That's when it's more dangerous. And so it doesn't matter where I'm at or what I'm doing. If God has called me to it, he will cover me in it, and that's the safest place that I can be in. And so I want for each and every one of us to just take a moment to sit down and to think and to say, am I not in that place?